in the meeting that I scheduled, which was about an hour ago for tonight at 7 p.m. my time, I'm in upstate New York, so I'm Eastern time zone. There were 3 essential items that I wanted to review as the agenda. One, go over the canvas, the sections, but with a focus on the projects. And then second, what I would like to do is go right into Eris and show you gentlemen how to get access to the VM image through VPN and using remote desktop, and also to how to use Eris to develop business process models and EPC, event process chain, how to integrate that with your information systems through automated workflow using BPO. And reason why the rationale for that is Project 3 was a new project that I introduced after teaching this course in the spring for the first time. The biggest question that came up from students working on just projects 1 and 2, Professor, I would like hands-on experience with developing business process architecture, hence the models, and how to use the various different tools. You know, there's many different vendors out there, but they all adhere to W3C standards, OMG standards, et cetera, et cetera. So there were several projects for several of my students that they brought in from their companies. In this case, I had like Nationwide Insurance. So the thought was, let's revise this course, add a 3rd project, put a huge grading emphasis on the projects themselves, but the 3rd project would be, now let's apply what we've learned about business process architecture, the notations, and the either EPC or BPMN, and on and on and on, and let's apply it within the context of a project. So that's why we have Project 3. I would please forgive me for stating that I would assume, but Benjamin, Douglas, and Kevin, I'm sure you guys are hands-on and you appreciate like a Project 3, so you could learn not just the technology tool set, but how to apply all those concepts and knowledge into building models.
Yeah,
Okay.
You can call me Ben, number 1. And number 2, I love professors from industry because they're more about doing and less about theory. So yes.
Yeah, I can second that. I'm excited about this actually.
I had a discussion with a colleague of mine at Syracuse a couple months ago. Straight academic doing research, and it's like, that's great, but when you go out in industry, you have to produce, you have to show ROI, things of that nature. So great. I appreciate that, guys, because I know with 3 projects it could be somewhat heavy, but the 3rd project I think would give you the greatest value. So with that said, let me switch to Canvas right now. Can everyone still see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now, let me go to the modules.
So actually, I cannot see the screen. I see the default PDF presentation.
Okay, let me do this over here, full screen. You are now sharing your desktop. Can you see me now?
I got it now, yep.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So if I go to Canvas, can everyone see Canvas?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
I can see Canvas.
Okay, so in Canvas, what I would like to do is go over a couple of key areas. First of all, lesson 00, it's just the basic boilerplate. how to use Canvas, how to connect within the university, the communities. For example, I posted an announcement that if by chance a link gets corrupted to specific reading material, here is the search engine and access to all the libraries across the university. There's only been one link that I've seen that is they did the carryover from Angel. So I created an announcement a couple days ago where you guys could take that link and go right to the massive library, use the smart search engine, and search across not only databases but content management repositories and so on. So, and then the academic integrity quiz and using Canvas quiz. So this is all academic. This is all basically setting the stage for how to engage Canvas and so on and other resources in the university. What I added here under course-wide resources, I did not mean to bury you guys with a lot of stuff, but as you can see, without sounding vain, I have a lot of industry experience, and much of this information is from hands-on projects. And I've worked for, I still work for Oracle, where I'd worked for IBM, Lockheed Martin, and so on and so forth. So what you see here is from the School of Hard Knocks, experience right out there. So if you go here, business process development, modeling resources, examples, detailed lectures based in technologies. If I click here, what you see is a bunch of really key sections. So enterprise architecture, understanding and relationships to business process architecture, key URLs, additional business process modeling notation technologies. In this case, we're using ERIS. Of course, TOGAF. And then examples of ERIS models based upon my experience with Lockheed Martin and Oracle and so on. Matter of fact, just a quick note, back in the mid-70s when mid-90s when I was with Xerox, I worked closely with Dr. Shear from IDS Shear, the founder and creator, quote, of ERIS. So he was the father of the first business process modeling language, and in that case, event process chain, to really put it on the same footing as the unified modeling language, which addresses more or less information technology, which includes systems, software, infrastructures, and so on. And so I had the pleasure of working with him. Xerox was working on several key projects. So in as much as W3C adopted the EPC language, they've kept it. And of course, industry as a whole has come out several years ago with business process modeling notation. So these are really key links here. Okay, if I go here, let me go to examples. And I'm going to just open it right up. Okay. What you see here is a breakdown of the notation of EPC. What you see here is ERIS has this concept of, they call it House of Business Engineering, referred to by the acronym HOBE, House of Business Engineering. And it looks at business process, not just from, by the way, this is the information that business functional people use to execute their procedures based upon policies, specific work instructions, but how these business processes that are governed by policies, how they drive changes in functionality to information systems, example like SAP, or to data. For instance, Now we have the age of big data analytics and so on. And of course, technology infrastructure itself and how we service technology. So if we go down here, I break it apart, some of the terminology. This is a function tree. Basically, these anchors will take you down to a lower level of extraction. And then here's an org chart. So if I go back to, if I go back to the, okay, sorry guys, okay. If I go back to the function tree would be, for instance, if you wanted to take a look at all the processes, which keep in mind, business processes, I'm using that term generically, they're hierarchical. You have a business, you have a business unit, you have functional business groups, you have project teams, and so on. So if you wanted to look at, say, all the processes supported with software support, then here's a breakdown: the management process, training process, improvement process, infrastructure process. Now, when I get into Eris Express, Eris has changed from having these anchors to drill down further. Like if I wanted to look at the how do we monitor and assess and audit subcontractors, instead of having a link here, it's automatically linked in as you right click, and you can link it to a multitude of different processes across the organization. This here is an organizational chart, which you could tie in what organizations are supporting software process development and so on, by row, by individual, by team name, etc. And then the function allocation diagram. So here we're talking about releasing new updates of software. So with this said, we have output and input. So right here, this is an event, release of software. We have output, input. Basically, case tools were used. Standard ISO 12207. We release it to our prime supplier for support. And by the way, any sort of necessary infrastructure, in this case, workstations, that may be required. And then an entity relationship diagram is more or less, if we're talking about building a logical physical model for a relational applications database. You could do this in Eris. You could set it up from an EPC view, or you could even use business process modeling notation, which Eris supports. Or you could basically do it in a UML diagram, class object, or go directly to a data modeling tool, which would be like Irwin or Oracle's SQL Data Designer and so on. This is event driven. Okay, so in Eris, they have this concept. Before an activity can be executed, they used to refer to prepare work orders as a function. They refer to it as an activity. So here there is an event, aircraft assigned. There's an activity or task that must be executed. Here we have an AND operator, and now we have Boolean logic. Is it mission data work order assigned? Is there a weapon store work order assigned, and so on and so forth? And then here we go, manage mission data preparation and so on. So modeling in itself, other than understanding the notation being used, the nomenclature, the specific symbology, modeling itself, I don't care if it's UML, if it's business process modeling, or creating orchestrated workflow with BPO, It's basically, it's assumed that the person that's doing that, they have, how can I put this? They have the gray matter. Let me use that term. They're able to think. There's critical thinking skills. They're able to reverse engineer. They're able to forward engineer their thought. They're able to multitask. They're able to look at any process from a multi-dimensional view. Like if I was creating, say, a series of multi-dimensional cubes in a data warehouse, think of it like a Rubik's Cube. I'm looking at all different sides because what looks good on one side may be ugly on the other side. And it's the same thing for process in itself. That's why we get into, deploying business and technical risk management for that purpose. And then this is just another view of HOBE, the House of Business Engineering. And of course, this is a breakdown of the different key notation symbology. So that is really a good starting point, but I have something else that's been loaded. So when we get to project 3, I could show you something that is current and updated with Eris Express.
This question.
Sorry, go ahead.
So how does Eris compare to, let's say, Vizio? I mean, is it really just a different tool that does the same thing? Or?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. Vizio. Vizio is a one-dimensional tool, meaning that if I defined my business process, or say, for instance, I was trying to develop a data model, a entity relationship diagram, I cannot take that design and automatically connect to, say, a relational database management system to literally press a button, it creates the script, and I execute the script, and now you have the database tables created. It does not give you the ability to take your EPC and or BPM models and to basically then point to, say, a workflow engine and to generate the Beeple logic to orchestrate these business process models that you would also automatically create as well. So it doesn't have that capability. Vizio's a nice tool, but it's not an enterprise-wide tool. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's good. So in other words, you can build a model or a process in Eris, and then it'll actually create it for you if you're configured.
That's right. Okay. And something else too, as you save your models and you place them up, say, in a documentation portal, most companies refer to their business processes as a quality management system, a QMS, because they're governed by, in most organizations, a quality assurance organization for assessment and audit. So within the QMS portal, if I'm in purchasing and say you're in manufacturing, someone else is in supplier chain management business function, we access the QMS portal and we're able to access our processes. Now, these processes are not drawings. For example, if I was to make a change, say I'm in cost accounting, and I made a change to a unit cost for a direct component. Let's call it a critical direct component that goes into one of my quote finished good or product that I'll sell on the shelf. So that does affect my bill of material from a costing perspective. Now, if I do not have integration to purchasing through these models that are basically brought forth by integrating them through these information systems, like let's pick SAP. They have a purchasing mod. They have an SCM mod, cost accounting mod. Then when you do your purchase price variance analysis, that will throw off your data in doing some sort of predictive analysis so you could take it to a supplier to drive down cost. If I switched the cost accounting from, say, for direct components from frozen standard to systems averaging, well, that will create havoc with the general ledger in every facet of the operation. So these models are interactive. That's why you can integrate them with information systems, mods. I'll go back to SAP, like in SAP, they have financials, logistics, they have human capital management, the three main mods. But then in some cases, again, it's hierarchical. You could go down several layers. Well, in each of these layers, there's administrative components where you could add business rules and where you could integrate your models. So if you're executing a step, say on your purchase price variance business process, well, that step is automatically integrated with SAP for that particular mod for procurement. So it understands that when I execute this task, that there is a information system that is involved. So with Vizio, you cannot do that. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes, it does.
Okay, let me give you another benefit. When you're developing these business process models, either in EPC or BPMN, unbeknownst to the business user, it's generating object stubs. Well, what are these object stubs? For instance, say you had a process to reconcile your perpetual inventory once a month. So you had your business process models and so on that are integrated with the inventory mods on your, say, ERP system. And as you're updating one of your key processes to help you do perpetual inventory, unbeknownst to you, it's creating these object stubs whereby it's making a recommendation. It's noting that this is a possible point of integration, a possible step to introduce orchestrated workflow. So it's generating these object stubs, for instance, a BPO object, like a template, a XML, a preliminary WSDO, a SOAP UI. It's generating these. Unbeknownst to the user's just citing that there's an integration to this information system, or they made the notation that there's orchestrated workflow, so hence automation. Reason why I bring this up, because myself as a software engineer, if I'm supporting, say you, Ben, and you're the key business owner within that area of manufacturing for inventory control, then any changes you and your people make to your processes, I could see it literally in a series of directories that then I could pull from and start to incorporate that into my integrated development environment and build out the necessary orchestrated workflows, services, maybe expand the logic of a Java app, say to do inventory counts on a routine basis. So that's the really excellent point that it brings to the table, because they can no longer point the finger at the software engineer that's supporting you, Ben. So if something's wrong, 9 times out of 10, it's because someone made changes to the processes that basically affected the workability of these information systems, supporting them, and in some cases, the underlying information technology. What I mean by that is, you know, the hardware, server, network, the data warehouses, and so on and so forth. So bottom line is, I'm tightly coupled with you, Ben, if I'm supporting you from a software engineering role, or hence IT role. So you can never point the finger at me 9 times out of 10.
Where do they insert, like, say, service management into the process, right? Like CAB, for example.
Service management? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like, for example, you can't make these changes directly from the tool, right? I mean, they have to go through some sort of process to get it okayed before they go into production.
Oh, no, you can make these changes directly to your business processes, your models. Your models are, just bear with me, your models are taking a place of the old Word-based files, where here's my policy, it's in Word, and by the way, on the last page, it notes that there's 2 or 3 other procedures. And so I have to physically pull it or electronically pull it from a directory. Business models, they're replacing that. And they're basically tying in actual integration. So if there's a change that needs to be made in service management, you would have a process that serves at the policy level, whatever that policy may address for service management, because in that type of process, as you know, it's requirements oriented. That drives the procedures. Procedures drive the work instructions. So if you had a model specifically for that one policy and you made changes there, guess what? The owner of the specific process models that are procedure oriented will be triggered to make his or her change through automated workflow. You can have an email being sent. Or, by the way, when Nick calls up his procedure, which is now in the business process model, I will have a pop-up message. Changes have been made to the following policy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think I got you now.
Yeah. So it's a shift in thinking in terms of the actual end product, no longer in Word, but basically now we're in models that are integrated. But the commonality is you still have, in any organization, when you talk about business process, you have policies and you have procedures and you have work instructions. And keep in mind, you may have at the business unit, say when I worked at Lockheed Martin with aerospace, we had a set of policies. But then as a business unit is broken downwards for space, for commercial aircraft and so on, we had our own specific policies, but they were subservient to the main policies of the business unit known as aerospace. So now they're being replaced by models and they're integrated and leveraging the information systems like email, workflow engines to help tie these models in. When SAP and when Oracle, when they go into an organization that is looking at implementing an ERP system, which you know, an ERP system, it's like a big battleship for any organization. It has specific systems that basically support the entire chain of operations of your organization. So with that said, what Oracle and what SAP does is the first thing they do a business process re-engineering effort. And what they deploy is the lean value stream mapping capability. So they take, quote, what we knew as Kaizen from Six Sigma with the Toyota manufacturing production system, where you focus on a very critical and discrete set of requirements and or specific problems. And in 1 week, you actually come out with a resolution, not on paper, but here's a resolution that works. And so Oracle and SAP at any given time, and I'll pick on Corning Incorporated, which is near me. They're both SAP and Oracle. We had like 42 Kaizens running concurrently, and knows that basically we're contingent upon another Kaizen to complete their work using lean value stream mapping. Then at that point, we would wait until they completed so we could take their output. So it's not the linear, elongated flow, like a water flow method for a project, but basically it's agile thinking and so on. So let me ask a question. In your organizations, how are your processes organized? Your policies, procedures, work instructions, I mean, how are they organized? Other than being on Word and so on, but how are they organized? How are they governed? How do they basically communicate with one another when there's critical changes in the business model? Oh, sneaker net. Yeah. That's an old term I haven't heard in a long time, Ben.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, it's not literally, that manual, but it really is just everything is stored in a large central repository, but they're still basically just Word, Excel, PowerPoint files, PDFs, things of that nature. So there really is no, coupling or there's no relationship other than maybe the directory they're all sitting in, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, true. Let me take a step back, Ben, and let me sort of recorrect myself. Last spring, a question came up with Vizio, and there's an open source software that would interrogate and read from what you had on Vizio and would attempt to translate it into either a BPMN model or a event process chain model. So this is open source, but it's the only one tool that I've seen out there, and it's not an industry standard, but it's quite capable. So the other one I wanted to go to very quickly, even though this is focused on business process architecture, the other key point of developing these models where you can integrate them to your information systems, as we discussed, and how a software and systems people can look at the changes you've made and basically harvest some of the object stubs for integration, workflow, functionality changes that you've made to incorporate into code, application code. It also has the capability to literally, I could take this business process model here, which is in BPMN, which somewhat looks like a UML state transition model, where you have a start, and then you have an end here. So this one was done in BPMN, but this process here reflects the number of technical views from a system software component. I mean, not a component, but a deployment view. So in other words, what I'm saying is that in tools like Eris, or you're speaking of IBM Rational, I could literally press a button and it would interrogate and translate one or more business process models and give me my technical documentation views. So I don't have to document in a bunch of, say, concept models, and I call them technical architecture. I can literally have produced my technical architecture from my business process models in the context of a engineering modeling language. So again, technical architectures are tightly coupled with the business process architecture. So this is some verbiage here, but what I wanted to show you was actual models. So here's an order processing. This is using the BPMN. Just definitions. I've provided to you guys examples of using BPMN models to develop. So in this case, BPMN, they like to use this horizontal type of view like swim lanes, like in the UML sequence model. And so where in the sequence model, there are vertical swim lanes between processes. Here, they're horizontal. So here you have a master file mainframe, but within this context, you have format warehouse information, and you have a master warehouse being updated. And so shipping to stores, and then I explain business process execution language, because what I would like to do, even though I'm not requiring BPO objects or models to be developed in Project 3, I would still like, for you guys to understand you could do that, because BPO does contain business logic that will be used in tandem with a web service for integration and interoperability. But I also wanted to, in these sessions, take time and actually generate a BPMN model or EPC, create a BPO model, and to integrate them. So this is what BPO constructs look like, the notation symbology. BPO stands for Business Process Execution Language. So if I develop my business process model, either in EPC or BPMN, I could also, based upon any point of integration that I've introduced into my models, I can literally generate the code, an object BPO stub, that I could reverse engineer and create the BPO model, or just go into Eris or whatever tool, Rational by IBM, and I could basically create the BPO objects, which then will generate the BPO process execution source code for orchestrated workflow. So these two here correspond to the two business process models I showed you. Remember? Here we have shipping to stores. We have shipping to stores. So this BPO model, if I go back here, would be an anchor wherever automation or orchestrated workflow was needed. Like for instance, update the store back office or warehouse. I could introduce that as an orchestrated workflow. I could have that as a link that can be executed or automatically be executed. So it could run in the background. And this is exactly what I mean here. When I spoke about, Ben, this is you here, the business analyst, let's say. Here's all your business process models. I'm down here as your software engineer. You're generating all these unbeknownst to yourself, other than, oh, by the way, I'm introducing a integration, and I just plopped a icon that represents integration to this information system. And you're generating these object stubs. I'm bringing it into my integrated development environment. And also, I'm literally translating these business process models into my new technical architecture models from an application side, data side, and so on and so forth. And so this goes right into UML, so I will back out of it. I did post UML tutorial, step-by-step, which I developed for Carnegie Mellon. And the reason why I did that is not to inundate everyone, but even though we're focused on business process architecture and the business process modeling languages, but I thought as much as I introduced workflow, I should let you know about UML and the relationship with business process models and also orchestrated workflow. So let me go back to modules. Another key area I wanted to point out was synopsis. For those weekly topics or topics that expand over multiple weeks, what you see here was my summaries of those key takeaways that were in the readings, but also where appropriate and applicable and pertinent, I added additional information that's detailed, meaning by example, because some of these readings, they're very good, but as you gentlemen know, the devil's in the details, right? So that's why I did this, to supplement the reading and to give you guys exactly what's important based on those readings, and also adding what I see based upon my industry and academic experience, what's important too, by showing by example, not just here's a word and here's a definition to it. So as you can see, they're all here. If I go back here, systems and software analysis modeling. There are some key documents that I've uploaded that basically, like for instance, common views and relationships, takes a business perspective on the development of the application architecture that must be supported by the business process. Well, actually, it supports business processes. So there's system software, systems architectural design principles and techniques. I had put forth this because in the systems architecture design principles and techniques, I call out specific industry standard enterprise architecture frameworks: Zachman, TOGAF, DUDAF, FIF, specific industry standard frameworks. If we're talking integration, SOA, which is services-oriented architecture, which, by the way, that framework is more business-centric than technical. So I call these out. Also, lean value stream mapping. I also introduce a enterprise architecture security model. That is really important when we talk about companies that are migrating to the cloud, and or they have a series of disparate data centers with